Joining me in studio this morning as we get back into the campaign swing of things, in studio running for District 19 Congress is Jodey Arrington. Welcome back.
Thank you, Chad. Good to be back. Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. And it's been a while, it seems, since we've chatted last. And in that time, what all have you been up to?
Oh man, we've been got 29 counties to cover, so we've been moving from that fundraising part of the campaign, which is not necessarily most fun, but now we're in the living rooms. Now we're in the coffee shops with farmers and ranchers and small business owners, and the like I say, the heartbeat of America, the guys on the front line, and that's a lot of fun. It's inspiring. And these folks, they're engaged, and there is a sense of urgency out there to get our country back, and makes you proud. And there's going to be a big turnout for this election. So I'm having a lot of fun, doing a lot of listening, and I think our message also is resonating. So that's the phase we're in right now, getting out to the 29 counties. What is,
I guess, maybe the top three issues, because there are so many issues, and we're going to talk about a lot of them here today, but there are a lot of issues impacting this country and affecting this country. What are the maybe the three biggest issues that voters are talking to you about?
Number one, national security, which includes not only the situation with the rise of Islamic extremism in the Middle East, it's border security. That's number one. I'd say the second, and a close second, is just this explosion in government over the last several years. Just oppressive, Chad. I mean, people feel a sense of tyranny. They feel out of control because of the lawless abuses of power coming out of the Oval, the judicial activism, and quite frankly, the dysfunctional leadership in Congress. So I don't feel anybody's fighting for them, and more wave upon wave of government, and it's killing the economy, and it's crushing the American spirit. That's two. Thirdly, would be the sense of who is fighting for our fundamental freedom and our constitutional rights. The gun control is the latest issue coming out of the King Barack Obama and his edicts. So they just again, this feeling of desperation and anger that our constitutional rights are being trampled. And let me add one more, because I think the other is giving voice to an otherwise voiceless rural America. And there are issues, and we can talk about them in detail, but that face this district, that are unique to this district, that we desperately need a champion for to tell our story. Because it's not just about our economy. What we do here, food, fuel, and fiber, the values that we have, is critical to our nation's not just prosperity, but security.
Do you think that those in the rural areas, talking about the farmers, ag producers out there, do you get the sense that they feel as though they've been abandoned by current leadership and maybe the current congressman who is up there?
You know, candidly, they do not feel like they've had a champion. Mike Conaway, as chairman of the Ag Committee, I think has done a terrific job, and I think that is a sentiment shared by those in rural West Texas, especially in the agriculture industry. But they are looking for the person coming out of the cotton patch to understand, appreciate, and be a strong advocate for policies that will strengthen our farming and ranching. And you know, you look at the Farm Bill, and you look at this recent crop insurance being pulled out of the budget. It was put back in another form and restored. But no, they know nobody's thinking about them. They know they don't have the votes and influence, and they can't afford. And by the way, I agree 100%. We as West Texans cannot afford to send somebody up there other than the strongest advocate and be the head cheerleader for agriculture for our country.
Well, and that's what I was about to ask you. If you're elected, what do you start to do differently than our current congressman in there right now? What do you do differently to give that voice to those in the rural part of the district?
Well, you got to work with people. You know, when you don't have the votes, and when rural America is underrepresented with respect to votes and influence, I think you've got to be able to work across the spectrum, and you've got to be able to beat that drum about the 24 million jobs that are created in this country based on agriculture. You've got to talk about this uneven playing field that exists with the likes of China, farmers in China, and our farmers in America, where they're subsidizing their cotton now to the tune of $1.40. Our farmers are getting 60 cents. Now, I'm a free trade guy, but that's not fair trade. And so you got to tell the story. You got to talk about the value of agriculture so that people understand, again, not only economically, but what food and fiber security mean to this nation. I think that's been lost on our country. And I'm not even sure in this district that people, I'm not sure they fully appreciate that if cotton, for example, just using that as one example in ag, if that goes away, billions of dollars will be impacted in just Lubbock alone. So it's a big deal.
Do you think at times, and maybe this is a little inside for people, but when running as a candidate and you're talking to the rural parts of this area in District 19, and then you talk to inside the loop, parts of Lubbock, you go to Abilene, talk to people who live inside the city of Abilene, inside the city of Big Spring, you go to the cities. Does that approach differ? Do people differ in their approach to government between the two?
Oh, that's a good question.
And maybe the wants from a congressman.
I don't think so. I think it's maybe just a greater appreciation for different things. But I think the values of limited government, let's get back to the Constitution, low taxes, low regulation. I think that pervades both the population centers and the rural areas. What I think probably has a greater understanding and appreciation is that where our cheap, abundant supply of food comes from, and that what we do to support agriculture with these risk management tools, essentially, is it costs our country 1/10%. So it's not at odds with folks who are fiscal hawks and want that $20 trillion debt to go away. That's not what's driving our debt. And I don't know that people – I think there's a mentality right now, and I can understand why, that if it has a price tag, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a subsidy, then we should blow it up. And there are a lot of things we support in our country that are good for our economy and national security, and agriculture should be at the top of that list.
We need to take the break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Jodey Arrington, candidate for Congress in District 19. Back on the Chad Hasty Show, Jodey Arrington, candidate for Congress, District 19, in studio with me. And Jodey, once again, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you taking some time today. In the last segment, you talked about how that there were folks who were voters who have talked to you and relayed their concerns about leadership and about Republican leadership inside Congress. We'll get to some of the president's deals here in a little bit, but how is Congress working now? We have some new leadership in. Are you so far satisfied with the current leadership of Paul Ryan? Or do you think we haven't seen enough, or is there, frankly, just not enough time to know how he's going to do?
Probably a combination of what you said. I'm not satisfied. Let me be clear about that. The omnibus did not satisfy me.
Right.
Again, if we think that the greatest long-term impact and risk to our country and to our children is the national debt, we didn't do anything fundamentally to deal with that.
If you were in Congress, and I know it's easy, there are probably a lot of people who are saying, well, this is easy to say right now, but if you were in Congress, would you have voted for that spending bill?
Oh, no, absolutely not. For the fact is that $20 trillion is the millstone around the neck of my children, and so the answer is no. And then you got the Planned Parenthood issue, which, again, it's one thing, we shouldn't be funding any organization that supports abortion. Taxpayers shouldn't be funding those. But an organization that harvests children body parts and sells that's just unconscionable. It's immoral, and those folks ought to be thrown in jail. And so for those reasons. Now, I will say that there were some good things in there, like we cut the EPA. That's a good thing. We lifted the ban on crude oil, exporting American crude oil. That's good for this region, and I think good for our country. But on whole, no. And I think Paul Ryan, I'm gonna wait and see on him, because I think that was sort of handed to him. I don't know. Right. I'm gonna reserve judgment for in the upcoming weeks and months,
if elected, because you brought up something interesting with the spending bill, and that was it had some good, it had some bad. As a congressman, how do you weigh those two things and then go out and vote? When do you say, I'm absolutely not going to vote for a bill, even a spending bill, if it includes this, this, and this? When do you decide to pull the trigger on that?
Well, again, that's a great question, and you hate to be nuanced on when you're communicating with your voters, but I'd say, there are some moral imperatives. I think we even mentioned this on the last show, and this issue with Planned Parenthood is a moral imperative. I think another imperative for me would be funding our military, especially when they're deployed and in conflict. I don't think you need to make we can afford to make perfect the enemy of good. You're not going to get everything you want. This is a big country. They don't all think like I do and you do and our most of the voters in this district. So we've got to – we didn't get here overnight, Chad. We're not going to get out of it overnight. And we've got to be able to govern too. So we got to fight, okay, for the future of our country, but we also have to build it back. And when it comes to some of the ag policies, or even this highway bill where we restored crop insurance, was it a perfect legislation? No, I could find fault in it. But on balance, I think it was good for our country and good for our economy.
A lot of voters are looking for real leadership to send to Washington, D.C. What real leadership would you say you bring to the table versus everyone else who's running for this seat?
Leadership is a lot of things, but at the bottom line, it is results oriented. And if you can't achieve results, you're not a leader. So there's a lot of talk about what candidates will do. There's a lot of talk about our ideology and our values, and all that's very important. I don't think you're going to see a lot of separation in that. Here's where I think you'll see separation, in that very question. In what results have been produced on account of the leadership of the candidates that are vying for this seat. I can only speak for myself to tell you that when I was entrusted with the responsibilities in leadership during the Bush administration at a federal agency, we reduced the budget by millions of dollars. We cut regulations and reduced the burden on small businesses and our community banks, and we helped pass laws, deposit insurance reform to be specific, that strengthen our community banks. So the issue is, can you operate in that environment and leave it better than you found it, and more conservative and more reflective of our conservative values? I've done it, and so I'm asking the people of this district to send me back there to do more of it, because our country needs a whole lot more of it.
Let me ask you this, and this dovetails in with leadership. We just had a big blizzard here in Lubbock. There are a lot of people blaming one of the candidates who's running, the mayor, for not showing a lot of leadership in the blizzard. Is that fair or not fair?
Well, my focus is on Congress, and I think the people of this community have spoken. I think the mayor has spoken, and I think that dialogue has been very transparent, and I'm not a guy that's going to pile on. That's just not my style, and I know it's a tough job, and so I'll let folks come to their own conclusions, but it is a tough job. So I'm running for Congress, and I'm more concerned about our country drifting so far from our Constitution and so far fiscally and from a national security perspective that we become the next member of the European Union and not the great United States of America again. That's what I'm thinking about every day.
Let's talk about the executive orders real quick. As we're running out of time, visiting with Jodey Arrington, candidate for Congress. President Obama threw out some executive orders on gun control. If the presidential election doesn't go the way that many people want it to go in this area, which is a Republican, you'll have probably Hillary Clinton as president. We can only assume that Second Amendment will continue to be under assault. As if elected as a congressman, how vocal will you be in defense, and what actions do you think you'll take? Because a lot of people want to see action from their congressman. What can you do to defend not only that constitutional right, but the other constitutional rights that you've talked about?
Well, I can't even hardly hear you say Hillary Clinton next 4 years, and assault is a mild description. Absolutely, I will fight that, and we will push back. This is just another, no surprise, breach of the Constitution. The powers vested for making laws are vested in Congress, not in the executive branch. And the Second Amendment is clear. The Constitution is clear. The federal government shall not infringe on our rights to keep and bear arms. So whether you do like Culberson has threatened and defund it, or you just use your bully pulpit, certainly the courts, and they've done this before with the EPA private property rights grab. They did it with the unconstitutional, lawless DACA and DAPA policies. So, I mean, we can be hopeful that the courts will also intervene. But I will use every means necessary to stop the lawless abuse of power by the executive office, whether that's Barack Obama, whether that's a Republican or a Democrat, by the way.
Has Congress done enough, in your opinion?
Absolutely not.
What should they do?
In this regard or in general?
In general, from what we've seen from President Obama since he was first elected.
Well, we finally have a repeal of Obamacare, but that's and I'm glad it's here, okay? I mean, I celebrate that because now we finally put it on President Obama's desk, and he's got to explain to the American people why he's smarter than we are and why he knows best for what's good for us and our economy and our small businesses. And that's going to help us in this presidential election, just like national security issues will. So there's a lot. We should have put that on there long before. Mitch McConnell's been weak, and we haven't fought enough, and we hadn't pushed back enough, and we haven't spoken in a unified way enough. And so I know we're running out of time, but there's a lot we can do that we haven't done. No, Congress has not done enough. And I'd like to be a part of the leadership that does do more to get our country back.
Tell people where they can find more information on you.
Just go to our website, jodyarrington.com, and follow us on Facebook, and send us your comments, and we'll be happy to get back to you. And again, thanks for the opportunity, and please send me to Washington so I can go get our country back and give voice to an otherwise voiceless West Texas.
Jodey Arrington, candidate for Congress, District 19. Appreciate your time.